Most people believe they were hired because the company needed them. They weren't. They were hired because the company had a problem, and for a period of time, they happened to be the best available solution. The uncomfortable truth is that businesses have never been loyal to people. They've always been loyal to solutions. And the moment a faster, cheaper, or smarter solution appears, they don't replace the employee, they replace the problem that employee used to solve. Most people enter the workforce believing they are building a career. They choose a profession, spend years earning qualifications, gain experience, and expect that each additional year will make them more valuable. It feels like a fair agreement. If you become better at your job, the market will reward you with greater security, higher income, and a more stable future. For decades, that belief seemed reasonable. Companies expanded by hiring more people. Promotions followed seniority. Experience was treated as proof of value. The longer you stayed, the harder it became to imagine that your position could simply disappear. But something unsettling has happened over the last few years. Across industries, experienced employees are finding themselves replaced, not because they suddenly became incompetent, but because the work they were hired to do no longer requires the same human solution. At the same time, younger professionals with fewer years of experience are sometimes creating greater impact by combining technology, broader thinking, and faster decision-making. Most people explain this by blaming AI, automation, or a weak economy. But those are only the visible events. The deeper misunderstanding is much older than AI itself, and until you see it, every technological revolution will continue to feel like an unpredictable threat instead of a predictable consequence. Most people think the problem is that companies are replacing people. That is not the real problem. The real problem is that people misunderstand what companies have been buying all along. A company does not hire a marketer because it loves marketers. It hires someone who can help it acquire customers. It does not hire an accountant because it values accounting as an identity. It hires someone who can help it manage financial risk. It does not hire a manager because it wants managers. It hires someone who can coordinate decisions, reduce uncertainty, and keep the business moving. In other words, companies do not buy people. They buy solutions to problems. For a long time, the human employee happened to be the most practical solution available. But when software, automation, AI, or a different business model can solve the same problem faster, cheaper, or more reliably, the company is not betraying the employee. It is simply choosing a different solution. This changes the entire conversation. The question is no longer, how do I protect my job? The question becomes, what problem do I solve that organizations will continue paying to solve? Once you see that distinction, the fear surrounding AI starts to look very different. This is Mind Over System, where we look beyond headlines and trends to understand the hidden systems shaping our economy, our decisions, and ultimately, the future of our lives. Most people think a company hires people. It doesn't. A company hires a solution to a problem. That may sound like a small difference, but it changes everything. A business doesn't wake up one morning thinking, we need another accountant. It wakes up thinking, we need our finances managed. It doesn't need a marketing manager. It needs customers. It doesn't need a software engineer. It needs a product that works. The job title is never the objective. It is only one possible solution. This is where most careers become fragile. People spend years improving within a role, while businesses are constantly searching for better ways to solve the underlying problem. As long as you confuse the role with the problem, every technological change feels like a threat, because you're trying to protect a position, while the market is trying to improve an outcome. That is why companies don't replace people, because they dislike them. They replace solutions that are no longer the best available. Once you understand this, you stop asking, how can I keep my job? And you begin asking a much more important question. What problem am I actually solving? Because jobs change, titles change, tools change, but problems are what businesses are willing to pay for. If companies buy solutions, then another uncomfortable question appears. What happens when the problem changes? This is where most people misunderstand technological disruption. They think AI is destroying jobs. History suggests something more precise. Jobs disappear when the problem they were designed to solve becomes less important. For decades, many professions were built around a world where information was scarce, communication was slow, and coordination required large numbers of people. Experience in that world had enormous value because it helped organizations operate under those constraints. But when technology changes the constraints, the same experience can lose much of its advantage. The danger is not that your knowledge becomes useless overnight. The danger is that the environment changes faster than the assumptions behind your knowledge. That is why a person can become more experienced every year while becoming less relevant to the market. Not because they stopped learning, but because they kept optimizing for a problem that is gradually disappearing. This is the second mechanism of the modern labor market. The market does not ask, "How long have you done this?" It asks, "Is this still the problem worth paying for?" Once that question changes, seniority becomes less protective than most people imagine. And that leads to the final mechanism, the reason some individuals become dramatically more valuable even as automation expands around them. If solutions can change, and problems can change, then what remains valuable? Not a job title, not a specific tool, not even a particular skill. What survives every technological shift is the ability to make better judgments. Because every solution begins with a decision. Before software is built, someone decides what should be built. Before AI generates an answer, someone decides what question is worth asking. Before a company invests millions into a strategy, someone decides which opportunity deserves attention and which one should be ignored. Technology can execute. Technology can optimize. Technology can accelerate. But it cannot take responsibility for choosing the direction. That responsibility still belongs to people. This is why the most valuable professionals are no longer those who simply perform tasks exceptionally well. They are the ones who understand the problem deeply enough to choose the right solution before execution even begins. Execution is becoming cheaper every year. Good judgment is not. And that is the real shift happening beneath the headlines. The market is no longer separating people by how much they can do. It is separating them by how well they can think before anything gets done. If this sounds theoretical, look at what companies are actually rewarding today. Across industries, organizations are becoming smaller while expecting more output. Teams that once required 10 people are now expected to deliver similar results with 5. Job descriptions are expanding. Instead of hiring specialists for every task, businesses increasingly look for people who can connect ideas, make sound decisions, and adapt as priorities shift. This pattern explains why two professionals with similar technical skills can have completely different careers. One continues executing familiar tasks. The other identifies new problems, redesigns workflows, and helps the organization move forward. The difference is not intelligence. It is not effort. It is not even experience. It is the ability to create clarity when the environment becomes uncertain. That is exactly what companies are buying. Not a person, not a title, but a better way to solve the problems that matter most. Imagine 2 employees joining the same company on the same day. Both are competent. Both work hard. Both consistently meet expectations. 5 years later, one is promoted into a leadership role. The other is informed that their position is being eliminated. At first glance, it feels unfair. After all, both contributed. Both were dedicated. Both gained experience. But the company wasn't comparing their effort. It was comparing the problems they solved. One employee became exceptionally good at executing an existing process. The other gradually shifted their attention beyond the process itself. They questioned why it existed, identified where it slowed the business down, and redesigned how the work could be done. Ironically, some of their ideas reduced the amount of manual work required. They didn't protect the old solution. They improved it. The first employee became more valuable within a role. The second became valuable beyond the role. That distinction is easy to miss, but it changes everything. Companies rarely promote people simply because they perform yesterday's job better than everyone else. They promote people who help the company solve tomorrow's problems before everyone else sees them. And that is why two people with similar talent, similar experience, and similar work ethic can end up on completely different paths. The difference was never who worked harder. It was who continued solving the problems the business still needed solved. This is why the future of work is not simply about AI. It is about how organizations define value. For generations, businesses expanded by adding more people. Growth often meant larger teams, more departments, and more layers of management. Human labor was the primary way to solve increasingly complex problems. That assumption is beginning to break. Today, many organizations are asking a different question. Not, who can do this work? But, does this work still need to be done by a person at all? That single question is quietly reshaping the labor market. It changes how companies hire, how they promote, how they invest, and ultimately, how they decide who stays and who leaves. This is why many people feel blindsided. They're competing to become better employees, while businesses are redesigning the work itself. One side is improving the solution. The other is changing the problem. That is why the gap continues to grow. It is no longer enough to become more efficient at yesterday's work if tomorrow no longer demands it. The people who struggle the most won't necessarily be the least intelligent or the least hardworking. They will be the ones who mistake stability for permanence. Because the market has never promised to preserve jobs. It has only rewarded those who continue solving the problems that matter now, not the ones that mattered yesterday. The biggest mistake people make is believing they have a career. They don't. They have an economic relationship with society. Society rewards them only as long as they continue solving problems it considers valuable. The moment that value changes, the relationship changes. That is why no profession is permanently safe. No title is permanently valuable. And no amount of experience can protect someone who is solving yesterday's problems. Your career is never defined by what you do. It is defined by why the market still needs you. This realization isn't meant to create fear. It is meant to create clarity. Stop asking how to protect your current role. Start asking what problem the world will continue paying to solve. Because careers are built around roles. But long-term value is built around understanding problems. Roles will always change. The ability to recognize meaningful problems never goes out of demand. Perhaps the question has never been, will AI replace my job? Perhaps the better question is, if my current job disappeared tomorrow, what problem would people still trust me to solve? Because in the end, companies never hired people. They hired solutions. And the future belongs to those who understand the difference.